San Diego Employment Attorney Ward-Heinrichs is back on Big Blend Radio Success Express show today, and he's going to talk about what is happening in regards to AB5. He's talking about the amendments that really has taken some of the exemptions and expanded them, which is important. It's all part of the ABC-Independent-Contractor-Test that happened earlier this year and even started even last year. We've been talking about it for quite a bit, and then COVID happened, and I didn't even think anything would happen this year, but apparently it has. And apparently it happened fast. So Ward is back on the show. You can read his articles. He's one of our regular contributors, not only to Big Blend Radio, but also to Big Blend Radio and TV magazine. His latest articles about COVID-19 and all the laws, employment laws regarding that. And also he's a contributor to Parks and Travel magazine, where he talks about hospitality and tourism, because he represents hotels and restaurants and also the employees. So the most important thing, though, is to go to his website, bestemploymentattorneysandiego.com. So welcome back, Ward. How are you doing?
I'm doing great, and thanks for having me back. I mean, we did 2 shows, bang, bang, in 2 weeks, and it's good to be back in the saddle. I really enjoy it.
Cool. Yeah, we've missed you so much. It's like what? We're getting into like what's going on. It seemed like everything kind of like quietened down with COVID, and the AB5 thing was a big deal, or I should say the ABC test, whatever. It's all about the alphabet, right? The beginning of the alphabet.
AB5 is the legislation, ABC is the test. Yep.
Okay, but I thought is anything going to happen with COVID? Everybody's so centered on that. So movement happened. It's like finally, we can make things. I was going to say we can go potty again now. You know what I mean? We can make things move along. I'm sorry.
Okay.
That, you know what I mean.
Yeah, you
can. Make things move. Yeah. So this happened fast. That you guys had some amendments.
Yeah. Well, there was a big outcry. Before the legislation, I think we talked about this a little bit. I would get calls from, for instance, translators. There's a lady who was a translator for the courts. She called me and said, "Hey, is there any way we can be exempt? Because, boy, it just makes sense the way our business works that we'd be exempt." And I said, well, the way I'm reading it, I don't think so. And so that's a group that didn't get one of the original exemptions that got one this time around. And I said, look, you probably really need a lobby. And I think they probably did do some lobbying. And so that's the new changes to the AB5 legislation were partly driven by complaints and lobbying. And as I said, for instance, one of those groups is translators. Had other calls from people who were in referral agencies, but they didn't. The way I looked at the law, they wouldn't qualify because they weren't specifically named. I mean, it named only a certain area or certain types of businesses that could qualify. And now I think that the guys that had talked to me probably qualify. So there's just a lot of people really wanted this to change, at least get an exemption for themselves, and there are many new exemptions, no doubt.
Well, I also want to touch on music, because that was something I remember, I think it was over a year ago, you talked about this thing where bands,
music.
The music industry was huge, and you were mentioning it was this happened in another state where a band that was kind of like the resident band, every Friday or every Saturday night now became, now you're an employee versus independent contractor, which really screws with musicians because musicians want to be free, man. It's even now you don't want to be locked into. Well, you do want to have the big record deal, but maybe not. It's this weird thing. And musicians that I know, back on the day when I was allowed on Facebook before they kicked me out because I got hacked. I didn't do it. I didn't do anything political.
Kicked off. Okay.
I totally am disabled. They said you are disabled, and I'm like, excuse me. But anyway, I remember, and even Twitter, all of that, musicians banding together with petitions against this whole act of hello, we are free, free enterprise, man. We are free agents. We're freelancers. We are not employees. We have our own business. And a lot of them even had their own business names and whatever. They had their own, they were smart about it because a lot of them have their own labels and they have, they're hello, we've all learned not to have the dirty manager under the table. So it's this, they had full-on petitions, and I know it happened in California, Texas, Nashville, all over the place about that. we're not, we're not employees.
It was huge here, and we did talk about that more than once. That case out of, I think it was New York, and I always say I don't remember the exact state. I remember reading it, but it just struck me because I was looking up ABC test before AB5 went into effect. And I read that case and I go, whoa, that means if you play at a local bar for 2 hours every week, you could be an employee.
Yeah.
And the New York case said yes. So, we didn't have an exemption under ours. So I'm thinking, oh, these guys got to be employees. And the music industry went crazy here. There were lots of articles about it, after January, after AB5 went into effect. And they were saying, hey, you're really killing us. No one's going to want to hire us the way it is right now. They don't want to make us all employees. If they're going to have employees, they'll have a handful of people who come in and work 8 hours a day, that kind of stuff. And the industry is going to change so dramatically, and it just doesn't work the way we're set up. And so the legislature listened, and they made that change.
Musicians are really, from what we've seen, they get paid for the night, not by the month, even though they might go there 4 times a month, right? Maybe every Friday from 7 to 11, right?
Yes, you're right.
They get that. And then, but then there's tip money involved, which complicates, So it is a real, how can I say, for a musician, like if you are running your own business, you have tax write-offs that you don't get for that you don't get if you are now an employee. You see what I mean?
Oh, yeah, there's that too. Absolutely.
Yeah.
I agree with you.
That's a huge thing.
And it's changed this year federally. It's changed because a lot of musicians now have studios in their homes, right? Some of them will have to take their garage and convert it into a complete studio. And now the laws of tax laws federally will say you can't write that off anymore. That's it. Boom. Yeah. And everybody thought taxes would be nicer this last few years. No, just saying it didn't. It wasn't a good plan. And so musicians are getting screwed on that. You can, you are gonna. They bring people over to come and record with them, and hey, pay them and whatever they have. Most musicians I know, some musicians have a job. And then they're doing music on the side, their true passion, but they know that, paying the bills first is good. And some people are all in it. Majority are all in it, no matter what, however way they have to do it. Even if you have a family, it's different. But if you have a recording studio on your property, you can't run it as a write-off anymore like you used to. It's like a home-based business now. You can't take your spare bedroom and run it as a write-off. So things have changed so much. However, I think what's so great about this, Ward, is that people came together and legislation did change. I think that's huge. It's a big deal that people were able to do that.
Because of the groundswell after law. I mean, you know me. I try not to comment on politics when I do this stuff. I just say, here's the law. Here's what I see. I'm getting my crystal ball out. Here's what I think might happen. Some of it may or may not be good. And I have to say that when they first made this law, I was like going, oh, this is not going to be good. It's going to affect too many things in not a good way. And I think they really corrected a lot of that with this latest legislation. That was emergency legislation that went into effect as soon as the governor signed it on September 4th, because they thought it was that important. So, no, you're right. They listened. They made changes. It's going to be a lot better.
Okay. Uber and Lyft, could that help? I know we touched on that last week, but
I was thinking about throwing that into my last spiel, but I think they're feeling the pressure of that too.
Yeah.
As you know, there's a referendum on the ballot this time, so on November 4th or whenever they start counting votes, we're going to figure out whether Uber, Lyft, and other app-based ride providers are going to be exempt as well. Now, the legislature refused to exempt them, and they've been lobbying hard for that. They basically made the same offer more than a year ago, that they're putting on the ballot now, which was, hey, look, we'll give them some benefits, we'll pay them some minimum, wages higher than minimum wage, and we'll ensure that they make a certain amount and stuff like that. But they didn't want to have anything to do with it, and I really think that is politically driven. That the reason why they did AB5 was really, and I've said this before, was really targeted at Uber and Lyft more than anything.
Wow.
That's not the only reason for the legislation, but that was a big thing. And so now Uber and Lyft said, well, look, we're going to just build a war chest and we're going to put this thing on the ballot. And they have, and their ads are just nonstop, support it. They've got all different people, people who say, we work 15 hours a week, we want this, we need the independence, it's not our first job. And you see just they're bombarding. And that's why I think, now I haven't seen any polls on it, so I really don't know what the polls say, but it just looks to me like it makes sense. Yeah. It looks like they're really supported, and I'm going to guess that they're going to get that amendment to pass on November 4th.
I do too, and this is interesting too. I know your article will be in the magazine after that poll, but that vote. But I mean, just today I got 3 press releases talking about website platforms that help those who are laid off of work be able to jump into the gig economy and get freelance work. And there's so many websites and apps that do that, where they connect people. Here, I've got this, I need this done. This is what, these kind of little bitty things. And right now during COVID, a lot of families they're scrambling to do whatever they can. I mean, right now, especially in tourism and hospitality, you listen to radio shows. I mean, we listen to them as we travel and stuff, not just obviously ours too, but there's definitely people that are laid off in this country right now that are sitting there needing to
work,
put food on the table, be able to pay their rent, pay their mortgage. And credit card companies, I mean, all of them half the time get the bailouts of everything. Banks and credit card companies get the bailouts. Do the people ever really see that? I don't know. Not going to get into that part. But what I do know is you can't wait around for the government. You can't wait around for anybody to help you. A credit card company, no one's going to really help you. Your landlord, you need to go out and do something. If you have a family and you got kids, you got to do something. And there's a lot of websites out there, and they're springing up faster than you can imagine, where they're connecting people to that. And so this is going to be interesting now as that happens with the ABC thing, like just nationally. And then I look at it going, what's going to happen, statewide. You and Ward, on the shows, you've talked with us all the time about this. Is California law, or state law and federal law, city law. I mean, even right now, England is saying if you sell things online to William Shatner, this is how I found out, William Shatner on Twitter, he's closing his online store to anybody ordering from England, because he will have to pay England taxes on people from England buying from his store. And he's like, excuse me, I'm not entering into that. So this is where all this weird stuff is happening on the internet. And so I just think the ABC thing, or AB5, is going to get bigger and bigger and bigger. It's going to be all year.
It's going to be all year. I mean, we've been talking about it for 2 years for sure, because there was a huge buildup. There was the case that was decided, and after the Dynamics case. And after, the Supreme Court said there, the California Supreme Court said there, okay, ABC test is going to apply under certain circumstances, but it was limited. And then the legislature, as soon as that happened, the legislature starts thinking, well, we need to do something. So they started planning. And so we've been talking about it ever since Dynamics was found. And we're going, wow, this is big. It's a big shift. It's a big change. And I think I predicted back then, I think the legislature is going to take this up, and they did, and they passed their own law. So, it's been years in the making and developing, and I think you're right. It's going to continue to develop. I think we've probably seen most of the development. Knock on wood, but I'm really pretty confident you're going to see more exemptions in the future. Maybe not as many as we're seeing with this new legislation, but I think we're going to see more.
Mm-hmm.
The government and law making and all these things that happen are so slow compared to the actual families that are being affected by different laws, that it's almost like by the time a law goes through or a change is made, the people who were affected by it have moved on and done something different or had to move. And I'm thinking about people who may actually move states because of these kind of laws.
Yep, no, absolutely. Some of that certainly has happened. People, I'm sure, left industries because of it. I've talked to people who said, "Hey, I talked to people who said I'm moving out of California." I have talked to people like that. Now, whether they actually did or not, I don't know. I've talked to people who said I'm going to do something different. I can't make a living doing this anymore.
Yeah.
So I've heard all of that, and I'm sure there's a percentage of people who've done all those things.
Yeah, because, not that they want to, but they really don't have a choice.
Yeah, Joe Rogan left L.A. He went to Austin. That's important.
What a good example.
Well, no, but it was. It's an important thing because the Comedy Store shut down. Like what was going on with the Comedy Store, and he was like, "I'm moving. I'm bailing out there. I'm going to open my own in Austin," and he got a big deal from Spotify. But it goes directly to what's happening. COVID really has hurt like that industry, and I think it was really cool that this stepped up in time. I think it's September that they made these amendments, and at the same time, hopefully people will be able to get to perform again. I know we've done shows with musicians that are booked. Suddenly, like they can't make the show because they have a gig, and we're like, "Go get the gig, man, while you got it." You know what I mean?
Yeah.
So we've done radio shows. It's happened, where it's like musicians, comedians, entertainers are going to go get what they can get, whether it's doing the, Walmart drive-in thingies or whatever. And I think if people are going to the drive-in, that's cool too. I think that's cool.
Oh, you're talking about Walmart turning their parking lot into drive-in theaters.
Oh, yeah. I was trying to figure out what you were referring to, but yes.
Yeah, that's what you're talking about. Yeah.
Oh, there's boondocking and then there's the drive-in, right?
Yeah, but
so there's two different things. but yeah,
I think it's funny.
But people are doing all kinds of things. Musicians are trying every way they can. It's not the same being online, doing a webcast because you don't have your audience energy. It's different.
Oh yeah.
It's like it's really. I mean,
different.
I know that as a musician. Like it's like first day I went into recording on somebody's album, I was like, dude, I don't know what to do with this. Like, this is weird. So I understand where musicians come from, comedians, any kind of entertainment, but they're trying really hard. So right now they need to be able to get what they can get and, grab it and run, take that money and go, not be messed around with. So it's interesting, but the referral agencies, to me, I wanted to touch on that because it's interesting to me because I thought they were just like, here's the portal, like here's Uber, or here's like the website that refers people, like, here's the best carpenters in your area. Why would they be involved with this? Wouldn't the carpenters and I don't understand why they're part of this, because they're just representing and connecting.
Well, right, but there is a gray area as to whether under the ABC test that the people they refer. I mean, again, it's sort of like Uber. Uber doesn't do the driving, right?
Yeah.
But under the ABC test, they're probably the employer and not independent contractor. That's why they're going for this exemption. They put it on the ballot for their own special exemption and for all app-based writing services. So, and it's the same thing with referral agencies. What are they in the business of doing? Are they in the business of, are they just a third-party middleman, or are these people really working for them, and that's their business, is getting work for these people?
But
so under the ABC test, is that the usual course of your business? That's usually the trip up one. Depends how you want to define that.
So what happens when they have the paid platform on their website? That's when it gets weird, right? If they have you can pay this so and so through that platform. Like maybe it's like, here's a website where you can hire a photographer for your wedding, and you can pay them through that website, and that gets weird then.
Yeah, well, yeah. The more involved the referral agency is, the more they look like an employer. So you're right. I mean, it's a gray area under the ABC test for sure, and you really can argue that they would be employers under the ABC test. Again, depending on all the things they're doing. Now they still have 11 requirements they have to meet. So even under their exemption, there's 11 requirements they have to meet. So if they meet all those, and they're also one of the industries that's listed, web design, photography, tutoring, all those, then the referral agency will be insulated from being sued as their employer. That's really what's going on there.
Well, yeah, because most of the referral agencies are national, so I don't know how you would even keep up with all the different state laws that are different. How would you do that?
Well, in California, there's another person I talked to. Was really starting a referral agency for chores around the house kind of thing. Little moving, little painting, that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
But that was local. And they wanted to go national, but they started local, and then they were saying, we want to do California, and, maybe someday we'll go national. But this is definitely not a national company. But you're right. Now, if you do have a national referral agencies, there are going to be different laws in each state. And you could run into problems because you're not paying attention to what the law in Montana is.
Wow.
Well,
I have
and
a friend
not
that's
only
starting.
That, can I just point out that when you go to do your taxes, wherever you're making your little incomes from here and here and here and here and here and here, that you might end up doing about 25 tax returns.
That's why William Shatner won't pay England.
Yes, far outweighs the money you're bringing in. Just saying.
Yeah, you have to look. Well, no, it's a true thing. William Shatner's like, I'm not paying England taxes.
Well,
That's
no,
enough
it's because
of that.
you have to, when you have to file so many tax returns because you made a little over here and a little over there, depending on each state has its. If you make more than $600, you have to file. If you make more than $1,200, you have to file. As a national referral agency, whoa. You might have to do a whole lot of tax returns.
But if it's on services, that's different, right? If it's on services.
I don't know, man.
I'm thinking it's different on services.
No. Well, I don't know about the taxes, but in terms of the ABC law, no, it's not different on services. Most of the ones are actually services, like wedding event planner. There's another group that were complaining.
Yeah.
They're saying, hey, look, we got to be independent contractors. So now they're included under referral services. So when they get referred, the referral service isn't on the hook. And then the wedding planner can go in to have an independent contractor agreement with the person who hires them. That's a different exemption because right now we're just talking about the referral agencies being exempt, but the whole thing is covered. So wedding event planners should be in pretty good shape. One that's near and dear to my heart is youth sports coaching. I didn't know there was referral agencies for youth sports coaching,
you're in
but
trouble,
I suppose there is.
You're in trouble.
Yeah, well, I used to do a lot of that, and I've got buddies who still do it, and I've got a buddy who now umpires for softball, and they have now been recognized under the I think it's professional services.
Really?
They're considered. They are considered. Yeah, there it is. It's right in my article. Amateur umpire and referee. So it wasn't clear. Well, actually, I would say they probably had to be employees before this new legislation was passed.
Wow. So that flips the other way. The coin goes this way. So that's this interesting thing. I mean, it's like, because then you look at schools and, and then there's volunteers too that maybe are getting paid for, like, here, you're going to do the hot dogs tonight. I don't know. That's that weird.
Absolutely.
That's that weird thing of who's going to do this and that. And I feel like, stop with the red tape already. but sometimes we need it.
Give it a
Sometimes
rest.
we need it. Sometimes we
Well,
really need it.
and that's
So,
interesting that you talked about, someone who volunteers and gets a little money for volunteering to run a hot dog stand. Well, now we got the single engagement event exemption. So they're probably covered under that. Now, I haven't looked at it in tons and tons of detail, so I have never analyzed the case under that. But, if you just do it once a week or if you only do it one time, you're probably exempt now. You can still do it the way you used to in the past and be an independent contractor.
Okay, so that's interesting because if you go and do, hey, I'm going to be, this is an interesting thing. So as we've traveled, a lot of the bed and breakfast people, the innkeepers, will become efficient for weddings because with COVID, a lot of them are doing elopements, they're doing small weddings, and so they're like, people are just like, please just do this. And they'll call up like 2 days before. Seriously, it's happening I feel so bad for bed and breakfast owners right now. It's like no business, and then suddenly we're like, please help us, And so there's these little spur of the moment events, and they'll call like someone, hey, here's this. This is a proper bartender or, a proper efficient, or maybe they've gone and done their efficient thing during the COVID. They went and got trained for it. That's an interesting thing because it may be a one-off for somebody coming in for those weddings, or like the one-off person bartending, or whatever it is. It could just be, hey, I'm DJing. I'm really good at this. I travel the country, but right now because I can't travel, I'll just do this one thing, and then next thing you know, ding. You know what I mean? So that's cool that they are exempt, for that one kind of thing.
Now, I might have been stretching the law a little bit there on the single engagement event thing, or exemption, excuse me. They do have to prove they're an independent business, though. So there's 8 requirements again, and so the volunteer, and so I really misspoke. The volunteer really might not be engaged or under this exemption, but I'm really sure you can still volunteer. I'm just not sure I'm not sure if there's an exemption for them. I'd have to look again.
Yeah, it depends on like if you're like, for example, if you are a photographer for a touring band, but you have your own photography studio and they're paying you as an independent contractor for just that tour versus you're my photographer and I have you exclusively and that's that. You're allowed to do some side projects.
Difference.
You're my photographer.
Yeah, now that's really interesting. Photographers are very interesting because, photojournalists do have their own exemption. They did before, but remember they had a cap. They could do 35 jobs for the same company. But if they went beyond that, then they would be an employee. Same with freelance writers. That was another big one. They were going, wait a second, 35, I write hundreds of articles a year and more than 50 for every one of them. And so they do have their own exemption, but someone who goes on tour, now, is that really a single event? Because maybe they would be able to, if they're their own business and they're doing a true single event, like maybe some type of concert. All right, I think that's probably a single event. If they do one a week, that probably fits under this definition. But if they're on tour and they're doing multiple, like 3 concerts a week, I don't know if that's going to work under this. I'm not sure that there's another exemption for them.
What if you're making a film? You don't really work for the musicians, but now you're going to film them. So you're making a one-off film. That's under your business name, but it's about the musicians, but you have to tour the musicians in order to make the film.
Well, yeah. Now, I'm not sure that they would be an employee. It's certainly not in the usual course of their business. So we might just fall back to the ABC test. I mean, remember, all right, you got to analyze a bunch of things.
Yeah.
First you go, is there an exemption? And you try to find one. You go, oh, yeah, there is one here. Do they meet all the requirements of this exemption? Yes, they do. All right, so they're exempt. The ABC test doesn't apply. Then you go, now, wait a second. There is an exemption for these people, but do they meet the requirements of the ABC test. Well, they're doing something, if they're doing something that's not in the usual course of that business, I would think that if you're on tour, it's not the usual course to have someone filming you. I mean, maybe not, but I think my gut instinct is probably not. So they wouldn't, the ABC test wouldn't make those people the filmers employees, because doing something that's outside the usual course of the business of the band.
Okay, so I know bands have photographers, but they're never going to be just the band photographers. That's
exactly.
You're not going to get enough money doing that. You can't.
Well,
you can't be
unless you're the Beatles.
If you're
I think it's possible
for the Food Network or something like that you're doing a bunch of people. That's different. You're employed as a photographer or the camera guy or gal or that's different. But I think it is like we say, go back to the beginning of this, and here's some exemptions, and it's just one of those things. I think what's important is that before you go and say yes to anything, look at it. We have to look. All of it.
Well, yeah, if you want to try to follow the law, and honestly, this law is not that easy to follow. I mean, if you're a lay person, doing the analysis is not going to be a lot of fun. I mean, some cases are going to be pretty clear, but if they're not clear, all right, take 2 weeks and figure this out. An attorney who's read this stuff and written a few things about it, well, I'm going to do it way quicker, and I can give you a reasonable answer on it. So, look at it. So that's one thing. Look at it, but boy, you might get buried in all the minutiae. If you do, then you got to ask someone who's a professional who can help you. But the other thing is that I see all the time. Yeah, call me. But the other thing I see all the time is, well, people just do business, and they don't really look at the law. They go,
Exactly.
And so, as long as a problem doesn't arise, then there's not going to be a problem. What happens, though, what I see, what people call me is, there was a problem, and I think there's a problem with the ABC test. So that's when I get calls. So yeah, it's good to do, some
homework.
Protect yourself. Do some homework and protect yourself. But honestly, a lot of people just aren't going to do it, and then you just got to see where the chips fall.
I gotta ask you this.
I see that a lot.
The one thing is, so let's go back to the photographer, right? Solo photographer, solo business, right? So a lot of times they're just like a solopreneur. Business is just in their name, right? Not necessarily an LLC or anything like that. They're just like, here I am, that's my business, and they just take gig jobs. Like it could be, I'm photographing a restaurant today. Tomorrow I'm photographing a wedding. And maybe I'm going to do a band the next day, but most of them specialize in whatever. But so at that point, when someone is friends with someone, hey, I got a friend who's a photographer. They're going to come do my wedding for me. And maybe they'll be like, hey, I'll just give you a deal. Don't worry about it. Just pay for this. We're all good. We need to now stop that and say, okay, we can't just be like, hey, it's all good unless you're doing it 100% free, or now we need to be professional. Do you have this or that? It's like, hey, I have this photographer that's going to come over, every weekend. Now we need to get serious. So, you know what I mean? It's like this, that's where we're at. I think that we can't just be buddy with business anymore. They've kind of taken that away of,
Well, hey, all right,
okay.
I'm going to agree with you. I'm going to agree with you to a certain degree. I'm going to say, the law, because the law is so new and it's changed so much recently. We're not going to be sure. But for instance, you mentioned photographer a bunch of times. All right, so there's an exemption for photographers. It's under the professional services exemption. So photographers generally are going to be exempt, but they do have to meet the requirements of that exemption, and that's probably where it gets sticky. It may always be sticky. Is this one really in business for themselves and they meet all the requirements? So.
Okay.
But we get used to it. We'll get used to it, and things will be better, 10 years from now. All right, now we kind of know.
Because this started because some people really needed to be. Let's go back to the original thing. Is some people were being kind of like abused in a way, professionally, in regards to they should have been employees and they weren't getting the pay that they needed.
Yeah.
So this is not a bad law. It was actually for the people in a way, but it was just done. It was done too broad. Like, I don't think anybody put the details into it. It's kind of like, what are we going to do with healthcare? Let's not get into that. But, like, you know what I mean? It's like that kind of thing where, it's going to take time to be refined.
Yes, I agree. And the effects are pretty dramatic because of the cost to business. So I think that it really did shock a lot of the business community and workers too. If workers felt like they were getting squeezed out, and like I mentioned a bunch already, that felt like they were getting squeezed out. So they need to go back and fix those things. And is the ABC test inherently evil? No, I don't think it is. There's a lot of good things about it. Did it need to be tinkered with much more than when it was originally drafted? Yeah, clearly it did. And they're getting there. And this may end up being a great law when it's all over. We're just gonna have to wait and see.
So, you represent people in California. Is this ABC thing in other states or just in California, or is it different from state to state? Do you know how California compares with other states?
That's a very good question. I've researched that quite a while ago, and the research that I stumbled across said that 34 of the states had some form of the ABC test.
Oh, okay.
And some of them applied it really differently. I'm going to say I think it was Indiana, but I'm not sure. Don't write that down.
Yeah, no.
Only applied it in the work comp situations. So in many states, it's applied in a very limited way. But then again, we talked about some of the states on the East Coast where, a band who plays in your bar once a week might be an employee under their ABC test. So, a bunch of states have it, but many states have applied it in a very limited way. But there are states who have applied it pretty broadly, too.
So we're going to see some changes going on. And the other thing is, like, it wasn't like, hey, you're going to be, the bar band is going to be an employee, but you don't get any benefits. That was part of the problem, right? It's like they weren't going to get benefits. And
well, they get food and drink at the end of the night.
Yeah, here it is. You're an employee. Here's your $20. You get a drink and a meal, like as a bar band. That's kind of it's wrong. It's just wrong. Ward, you're going to be back on December 1st talking about changes for 2021 for businesses. Which do you see a lot of change coming up with that?
There is, and I got to apologize. I'm really not up on all the changes yet. I'm going to have to
you have a segment, you have a month.
Study on it.
Because they do that. You always say that it comes in last minute, too. It's like all the way
up. Well, they've already started, though. There are clearly some that are passed. I really don't know much about them right now. But, in November, I'm going to figure that all out. But, I've seen articles, and I've saved them on my hard drive that said, hey, here's some changes in employment law. I haven't looked at them yet.
I just was amazed with COVID because even like lawsuits and court, proceedings, how some have been delayed or they're doing some by Zoom. And then I was just like, how are things moving forward in law, So like right now, are you able to see clients in person? Do you get to go to court, or do you have to wear a mask? I mean, do you have to wear one of those big plastic things, and the other ones wear wigs? I mean, like England gets the wig.
Yeah, no, those are all great questions. No, they really had shut down court operation. Well, they'd reduced the number of court things they do, and when they had hearings, most of the hearings are done either through telephone or video conference. And they've just started doing some more live hearings and trials. San Diego I think the federal court started in September doing a trial or two, and the county courts, which is the state courts in San Diego County, just tried a case. I think they finished up. They started it last week, and that was the first one in San Diego County since everything was shut down. You can't do any trials, can't do anything. They started, and they have like 25% of the jury pool that they normally have. It's right around that number.
Wow.
And they have more partitions. They have the distancing. They have the masks. And honestly, I've only done some teleconference sessions, so I haven't been in the courthouse. I don't practice the kind of law that would have needed to do that during the last 6 months. But I'm doing cases. We still do. I file stuff, and then for a while you couldn't even file. There was like 2 months in there where you couldn't file anything.
Yeah.
Oh wow.
But most filing in San Diego County, most filing is done online. So it's I was even wondering, well, why can't you guys accept some filing? I mean, come on.
Yeah.
But I guess they felt like their staff had been reduced so much, and that the burden on the people who left or were still remaining there was so high that they just didn't want to do it. So there's I couldn't file anything for a while.
Wow.
Now and then, like at the end of May, I could start filing again, and then I haven't done a deposition. And you're not required to do in-person depositions. If anyone objects to it, they don't have to do it. So it'd be a video deposition. So things are opening up very slowly, and there's no way if I had
What? No, we're back to that. What's his name again? Who did that in CNN that took his clothes off in Zoom? What's his name?
I don't know. I didn't hear about that one.
Oh, Jeffrey Toobin.
Yeah, the journalist just got nailed. Yeah. Well,
I'm glad I missed that one.
Well, I mean that's an interesting thing, and here's the deal too.
Sorry,
like,
it's just funny.
Ward, Weinstein just got nailed again with a big round of things. I mean, he's on his deathbed now, right? Harvey Weinstein. So that's, to me, that's still part of employment law because it was still all work related in some way, even Cosby in a way. I'm sorry, I put it all in there because it's harassment. It's part of workplace shenanigans and people thinking that they have to be all friends with them. It's still part of that discrimination part, and we've talked about sexual harassment and all that. But
let me even support your argument even more. Under California sexual harassment laws, you can't harass an independent contractor. So
I like that.
Yeah. So,
but
but
you
now,
shouldn't be able to harass anybody.
Well, no. I mean, it's bad behavior, no doubt. I mean, we shouldn't do that. But the law doesn't prevent all of that type of behavior, and unfortunately, or maybe it's fortunate, maybe that's free speech. I don't know, but individuals on the street corner can whistle at a woman if they want to, or girls can whistle at a man. I wish that would happen more often, actually. But that's a joke, just a joke.
I know.
I got contact the other day with the walking dogs.
But in the employment situation, you're right. There's a lot of laws covering that.
Yeah. No, but I just think that I was just saying that I'm glad to see that some of those cases are moving forward. I know it's been stagnant, and I'm glad to hear you're being able to start filing and everything again, and things are moving forward because, I mean, when there's a cog in the system, when people need to have, that relief, you know what I mean? And then there's some people that aren't getting tried until July. Was it June or July? What's her name? That's with the other case. The Epstein case is not getting. She's not getting tried until.
Oh gosh,
until
I forget
June.
her name. I know who you're talking about.
Giselle or
she's not getting tried until like halfway through next year. That's insane. So it's like you're looking at all these things.
Yeah.
But it does tie in. It's all part of that is all work related. All of it's all work related, and so it's like I'm serious. It's all part of it because
no matter what business you're in.
Yeah, if you're in a business and schmoozing, and if you're doing it and it's all part of that network, well, I'm not going to go. I shouldn't say the Epstein cases. Okay, we got one last question.
Okay. Now, a lot of the restaurants are now using the streets as far as putting their tables and stuff on the streets, and I know that they have to go to get permits for that. But what happens insurance-wise, or like somebody falls down and they're on the street, but it's still at the restaurant thing? Like, where's the liability coverage happening there, do you think? Like,
yeah, that's all right. That's not really my area of law, but I know something about it. So I'm going to venture a guess here. If the restaurant has moved out and they've cordoned off part of, the sidewalks, part of the parking lot, they're in control of that. And so I'm thinking anything that happens in there they could be liable. Now they probably have to be negligent. It's not strict liability. Yeah. So if they spill a drink and there's a bunch of ice on the sidewalk, and it sounds like they're kind of at fault if someone doesn't see it and slips on it.
Yeah.
So yeah, and normally that wouldn't happen because they're doing all that stuff inside.
Yeah.
And then maybe the more interesting question is, well, does insurance cover that? Certainly they would cover the inside premises. Are they going to cover the expanded premises? Interesting. I don't do insurance law. I have a really good friend who does. You might want to get him on the show sometime, and he would be able to shed more insight on that.
Well, that's interesting. I mean, it is. The whole world is changing. Ward, you know what? We've talked so much about sexual discrimination, independent contractors, musicians, photographers. I mean, we've done good. I think we've done good. Don't you think? We've covered a lot. And
yes,
I want everyone to know.
We have done good.
I know. It's good to have you back, as we've said, like last week and this week. And everyone, Ward's 2 articles are up on blendradioandtv.com. COVID-19. Employment laws, type that in. It's also in the new issue of Big Blend Radio and TV magazine that came out today. And also his article in regards to the amendments on the AB5 employment law, or I should say AB5, the ABC test. Is the AB5 on the please, the ABs need to go.
AB5, AB5 is the legislation that codified the ABC test for California.
Thank you. Thank you for being the adult in the conversation. So there it is. So everyone,
that's what I do.
It's up on blendradioandtv.com now. And as we're talking about all this online communication, our next guest, Sarah Elliston, is going to join us to talk about how not to take your pants off during a Zoom call. So, Ward, we always like to close with music for you. So today we're going to play a song. I know we've played it for you before, but it's called Work. Because it's kind of like the independent contractor saying, no, that's enough of that work. It's from our friends, the Joiners. This was recorded way back when we first started our radio show even, when they were in Nashville. Now they're in Birmingham, Alabama. So we're going to play that. But if you type in the Joiners on Bandcamp, you'll get all their music. They just put all their music back up on there. So check that out. But also, most importantly, everyone go to bestemploymentattorneysandiego.com to keep up with Ward. Thanks so much, Ward, for joining us. We'll talk in a month.
Sounds really good. It was a pleasure being on again. Thank you.
You take care.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
I don't want to go to work, working for a man who just treats me like a jerk, and he doesn't even know my name. Next time he asks me, I'll swear it's put and take. I don't want to go to jail. It stinks what I breathe in, and there's no room to exhale. Won't somebody go my bail? 'Cause I don't want to go to jail. Now please release me from this grip I never signed. Enough of this. Now please release me from this hole. Let me grow old. Let me grow old. And I don't want to go to war. And I ain't much for shooting, that ain't what I'm aiming for. And all my soldier friends are poor, fighting rich men's war. And I don't want to go outside. It's so scary on TV, and television never lies. Everything it sells I buy, and I don't want to go outside. Now please release me from this grip I'd never signed up for this. Now please release me from this hole. Let me grow old. Let me grow old. The bells are ringing noon where we are.